And we are about to get very uncomfortable as this war in the Middle East spirals out of control and, looking about a day and a half until a possible land invasion. But now we're also dealing with the massive energy shocks that we want to talk about on today's show. We've got a special guest. Mike Adams is going to be joining us to talk about the latest with oil, gas, and food shortages around the world.
Yes, how far is that going to trickle down to the rest of us? As we say a lot on this show, war is a theft from the American people, not just because it's funded by our tax dollars, but it also devalues our dollar. So what we're going to be able to buy is going to continue to shrink precipitously. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about, ground troops, possible ground troop invasion of Iran. What would that look like? It's horrific to think about. Hopefully we're not going to do that, but the rhetoric continues to increase. It seems again like the U.S. is sending peace negotiations. Every time we do that, we escalate the war. So we're going to talk to Colonel McGregor, or Dan Davis about my two favorite military experts coming up soon.
Yeah, and I just got word from Special Forces sources a few moments ago that 82nd Airborne Unit, of course, that had been reported publicly, are being deployed now. Green Berets from the 7th Group from the GESB Battalion who got transferred to the 82nd Airborne Division are also going. Also, I just learned that some people, members of the 7th Special Forces Unit, have now gotten transferred to the 10th Unit, which is in charge of the European sector. So this is all happening. And likely President Trump likes to carry out these wars on a Friday night. That's when he likes to start these things. So after the markets are closed, I spoke to sources in Israel that expect at 2 a.m. in Tel Aviv time that there will be sirens and that this thing will unfold dramatically. So we're going to get to all of those pieces. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to the show and being a part of our community here. Before we get to all of that, we want to tell you about our friends over at Rumble Wallet. We've had so many journalists on our show who have been debanked. Literally sitting next to a journalist one afternoon from the gray zone who was debanked right in front of me. He couldn't believe it. All access to his banking account information. And journalists don't make billions of dollars. So it cut off completely because of his politics, because of his journalism. That's where Rumble Wallet comes in, because banks can cancel our accounts and freeze our cards. And that's why Rumble launched Rumble Wallet, a wallet that no one can cancel and a wallet that supporters can use instantly to tip your favorite creators if you want to. No one can control it. What Rumble has no access to it. No one can touch it. Not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. Like I said, not even Rumble has access to it. It's yours, only yours, to protect your family and your future. You can buy and save digital assets like Bitcoin, Tether Gold, now the new USAT, which is Tether's U.S. regulated stablecoin, all in one place. Tether Gold is real gold on the blockchain with ownership of physical gold bars. So it's not only a wallet to buy and save, but also allows you to support your favorite creators. So support our show, support any of the shows that you love. Go to wallet.rumble.com or just search the Rumble Wallet on the app stores, Android or iOS. Rumble, that's the place to go, wallet.rumble.com.
Also, do you want a dating app that has actual relationships in mind, value-aligned relationships? Well, then you need to look into Upward. Most dating apps are just designed to keep you on there, keep you hooked, the wrong person. You can sort of try out people like ice cream flavors, no serious commitment. Well, if you'd like a value-aligned dating app, you need to, again, look into Upward. You can find people that are just like you, have family in mind, long-term relationships. We talk a lot about how systems are not really designed to serve people. They just keep you distracted or dependent. Well, obviously, most dating apps are like that because if you find somebody, you don't need them anymore. So, they're built for casual connections, not serious relationships. Look into Upward, where you find other people who have real life in mind. Someone who's going to ask you what you had for dinner. Bring you a breakfast quesadilla like I did for Clayton this morning.
That's right.
That was nice, right?
It was.
I would be thrilled if someone handed me a breakfast quesadilla. I'm just saying. So if you want real relationships like that, download Upward today. It's available on the app and Google Play Store. Again, that's Upward for real connections, real shared values, real life.
All right.
Real breakfast quesadillas. You know what's funny about...
If you don't have...
Go ahead.
If you don't have quesadillas for the whole team, then,
I do, in fact. I make big batches, so there's always plenty. And you know what else is funny about being married to your co-anchor? When you're like, I have sources who say, I'm like, who?
Not like
Who is that? There's no.
Gotta keep
There's no manners when it comes to your husband.
I know, but hey, then you get plausible deniability.
Then it's like
you don't have to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So stay off my laptop.
Okay.
Okay, and yes, it is Phillies opening day. People in the chat are like, "Go Adrian, go Rocky, go Phillies." Yeah.
Go quesadillas.
Okay, thank you guys for subscribing. Let's get into it. We got tons of news to get to, and we got a guest standing by. So, for the first time in U.S. history, the United States Postal Service is now adding a fuel charge to every package that you ship because, well, why else? The Iranian war. Fuel costs have jumped more than 30% since Israel's war with Iran broke out. So now they will add this on top of your shipping cost. Imagine how, like, if you're a small business and you're shipping items on a regular basis, you're not Amazon, adding on this additional fuel charge on top of that. Then this morning, the Financial Times reporting U.S. inflation will surge to 4.2% on energy shock, warns the OECD. Fuel lines around the world are getting very long. We've been covering, of course, what's been happening in Slovenia, parts of Europe, Australia, Thailand, the Philippines. It's just getting worse and worse. Many countries have run out of petrol, gasoline, or have declared now a state of emergency. President Putin of Russia just declared that the energy shock from this Iran war is having a devastating effect around the world, just like COVID. Here was his statement just a short time ago. Watch.
That is escalating, and it's making a more and more significant contribution to the global situation today. And it's dealing a great damage to the global logistic supply chains, production chains, and entire industries of the fuel production, fuel refinery. Our industries are getting these heavy blows, and it's difficult to predict what happens next because of this.
So Putin also, through his diplomatic team, are issuing a damning message about this war, that we are about to face an energy crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. You don't want to hear that. And that Europe is going to be begging Russia for oil and gas. Too bad one of your pipelines was blown up by the United States government. But here is Dmitriev. Listen.
Но наше предсказание очень четкое, что Европа и Британия будут умалять о российских энергоносителей, и Россия будет принимать соответствующие решения или их не принимать.
So it's really in their hands now. It's amazing how the tables have been turned, isn't it? Mike Adams is the founder of the Brighteon platforms, the Health Ranger. You might know him on X. I love following Mike on X because he just cuts through all of the BS and gets right to the heart of the matter. And Mike, great. Welcome back to the show. One of the areas you've been very focused on, of course, is fuel shortages, food shortages, and what the global impact of all of this is going to look like. Maybe you can just give us your 30,000-foot assessment before we get into more details.
Okay, sure. Great to join you again. Love your work. First of all, I would say that every major form of recognized abundance across our world comes from affordable, abundant energy. So energy is the primary driver of affordable food, which for many people translates into affordable families because you have to feed your kids in most countries, right? Hopefully. Also affordable transportation by plane or by car. So it's personal mobility, it's personal freedom. And food comes from energy. That's what a lot of people don't necessarily realize is how strongly every calorie of food that comes from a farm today is tied to energy inputs, and not just the fertilizer and the urea, which of course you've covered on your show, are now incredibly scarce because of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and with Trump's war on Iran, but also because of the fuel for transportation and the fuel for the tractors to do the planting and harvesting, et cetera. So food is extremely hydrocarbon intensive. In fact, farming is really more of a rearranging of hydrocarbons with the help of photosynthesis. That's what farming really is. And a lot of people didn't realize just how devastating this would be when the Strait of Hormuz is now constricted. And I just want to remind you, I'll turn it back to you, but the Strait of Hormuz was open before Trump launched this war by choice. So it was open. So not only did the United States, as you said, destroy the Nord Stream pipelines affecting Western Europe and their affordable, abundant energy from Russia, now Trump has effectively, indirectly closed the Strait of Hormuz through his actions. And now he's probably desperately trying to figure out how to get it open again. But that's where we are. Until the Strait of Hormuz reopens, the world will suffer dramatically economically and through food scarcity.
Mike, you make a great point. In fact, we had a senator just a short time ago on the floor of the Senate making that exact point about the Strait of Hormuz. Watch this.
Here's the problem. The strait was open before the war began. We are now seeking to solve a problem that we created. This is insanity. $2 billion is a lot of money. That's the minimum amount of money that is being spent every single day on this war. There are over a dozen families who are burying their loved ones in the United States, and there may be dozens more if this war continues. Prices are skyrocketing, not just in America, but all across.
Someone in the chat says, Chris Murphy's an idiot. In many ways, I agree with you, but what he's saying is true. Now, did Congress actually vote to end the war escalation? No. So we can't give Congress too much credit.
Right.
You wrote about how, you know, the mobilization of ICE, the strategic closures of the TSA, and now the looming fuel and food shortages are not disparate things. You said these are visible threads of a deliberate, premeditated pattern, one that is weaving a trap to the American people. And you said that it will lead to national lockdowns of movement, food, and fuel. So can you play that out, please?
Yeah, that's where this is headed. Clearly, in my view, it's the same pattern as COVID, but now with a different justification. So already many countries are suffering so-called energy lockdowns. You mentioned some of them in the intro, but also, for example, in South Korea, you're only allowed to drive on certain days of the week if you're a government employee based on your vehicle license plate. In Australia, you know, hundreds of petrol stations have run out now, and it's not clear when they're going to be replenished. What's going to come is government-controlled delivery of food and fuel. And this will encompass Americans, especially as prices get much higher and more job displacement takes place because of the AI displacement. And you just saw a humanoid robot walking around the White House. That's also part of the plan. That's why I have the AI background here today behind me. But as you have all this displacement, the public will scream for universal basic income, but the UBI will be tied, in my view, and Catherine Austin Fitts talks about this, and she's excellent on this subject. It'll be tied to a government-controlled CBDC that allows you to purchase a certain amount of food, but builds in the scarcity or the quota allowances through that digital control grid. And the same thing will happen with fuel, and also the same thing will happen probably with the number of kilowatt hours of energy that you're allowed to consume as a household. And interestingly, one of the off-ramps to that is to have your own off-grid solar power system and an EV, which is funny because Trump is becoming the world's greatest EV salesman now.
Right.
As more people are buying EVs. Go figure.
Well, you bring up a great point. This whole push, like I couldn't help but thinking when we're seeing this TSA move, right, the long lines at the airports, all of this is tied together on these austerity measures. And just, I love this CNN headline here, Mike, from Asia. Asia embraces austerity. Right, like Asians are thrilled about it. Like, look at this picture of this little girl. It's great. Asia embraces energy austerity.
We're fine with it.
As dire fuel shortages force Philippines to declare national emergency. They're all across Asia and now through Europe. We'll get to Europe in a minute. I want to unpack that, what Russia just said. But on the Asian side, it's very dire. But they're embracing this idea of austerity because they want to keep people home. That's been part of the plan all along.
Do you sort of see the racist undertones there as like they're a third world, they don't need much, you know, so they don't know any better is sort of what I read from a headline like that. What do you think?
Well, in the Philippines, they're very heavily dependent on transportation to and from work. They have long commute times in cities like Manila. And the fact that their fuel is now in short supply is going to be dire. And also the percentage of the Philippines' income that is being spent on fuel is now outrageous and unaffordable and unsustainable. So Philippines is headed for a real dire economic collapse situation if this doesn't get reversed. But I want to mention something. You said you're going to have Daniel Davis and Colonel McGregor on the show. They're excellent sources. And I believe that they will tell you that if this land invasion takes place, that it's not going to be a quick fix. The Strait of Hormuz is not going to be opened in any kind of permanent, reliable way by U.S. occupation of southern Iran, because Iran is going to fight back, and they're going to fight back from an existential position of their own national survival as well as their own national pride and thousands of years of Persian civilization. So that means that the Strait of Hormuz will not be open anytime soon, not reliably. There might be a few ships that slip through, but they're all going to be under heavy fire, and the insurers won't insure those ships. And U.S. naval vessels will take hits and possibly be destroyed or sent back for repairs, like the USS Gerald R. Ford. So this situation could go on for literally years, even if we land troops in Iran. And I don't think Trump is factoring that in. That's my position.
No, that's a great point. I want to talk about the European piece of all of this. You heard the message from President Putin today about how this is basically on par, if not worse than COVID, and it's spiraling out of control. You heard from his diplomats saying that Europe will be begging Russia for oil and gas. And we're already seeing major cutbacks and states of emergency being declared in Europe. We saw what's going on in Slovenia specifically, but this is going to be a cascade effect all through Europe. Maybe you could just unpack the European-Russian perspective on this.
Well, I think Russia is absolutely correct here, that Europe will be begging Russia for affordable, cheap energy or abundant energy, because it was upon Russian energy that the European economic miracle, especially in Germany, gave rise in the first place. The industry in Germany, for example, BASF, and the manufacturing of 45,000 plus synthetic chemicals, plus using the Haber-Bosch process, urea and nitrogen-based fertilizers, et cetera. All of that has been compromised and shut down because of the destruction of Nord Stream pipelines. But as Putin says, one of those pipelines could still be reopened. And if Europe doesn't want to commit energy suicide, they will beg Putin to open that pipeline and get some gas flowing. And don't forget that China and Russia signed a deal 6 months ago or something to have 50 billion cubic meters of gas from Russia's Yamal gas fields piped across Mongolia into northern China to feed China's industry. China's going to maintain its dominance of the world's industrial sector. The manufacturing coming out of China for vehicles and robots and drones will be incredible because of their access to affordable energy, some of it, a lot of it, coming from Russia.
I just, having lived in Europe for 5 years, it astounds me how the European people work so hard not knowing who's holding them under their thumb. So, in such a cruel manner. And it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch. And, Germany took offline energy sources because of
nuclear
green policies, and then also lost access to liquid natural gas. And their leaders are like, that's what we're doing. We're doing this. And then also supporting Ukraine. We've talked a lot about how if we see copious amounts of bloodshed, the American people will revolt. And I hope that that's true. Do you think there will ever be a consequence for the European leaders who have inflicted this on their people?
Good question, Natalie. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that countries like the UK are busy trying to figure out how to send their young men to die in the war with Russia. So that's part of their answer to stay in control. They want to eliminate their own nationalist populations and then have them exchanged, replaced with someone else coming in across the open borders. But what you're really getting to is the fact that Western European nations, they decided for one reason or another to commit energy suicide. They have the energy in Europe. They have it. They've got the fields, but they close them down, and they close the nuke plants, like you said, which is, a carbon-free, no carbon emission source of renewable energy, if you think about it.
Yes.
They've made these decisions. It's a suicide cult in charge of Europe. That's not the European people. The people, they despise their leaders. The people of Germany despise what the German leaders are doing. So I'm rooting for the European people to somehow replace or dismantle their overlords who are destroying their cultures and civilizations.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
One of the most troubling pieces of this is that, you compare this to COVID, right? And President Putin just compared this to COVID just a short time ago this morning. But I argue that there's differences because there was a lack of demand during COVID. People were being told to stay home. So they were overproducing. They had all this abundance of oil and natural gas, and they didn't know what to do with it. So that's why you had now we have an incredible demand and we don't have enough of it. So it's the exact opposite. And even like a sort of a 10% supply demand offset imbalance here could be catastrophic. The other big piece of this, Mike, is that, you've got petrol usually is not the first to fall. Gasoline is not the first to fall. It's usually diesel, jet fuel. But now we're seeing petrol almost first. We're seeing long lines at gas stations running out UK 2-day supply throughout the Philippines. So you're seeing this weird imbalance from a gasoline perspective, petrol perspective. And then I'm just curious your thoughts on the diesel, jet fuel, petrol piece of all of this, and how much of an imbalance would it take for this to be catastrophic? 10%, 20%?
Well, remember that refining oil into diesel fuel requires the right type of oil. So it's not just that we could, we can't just close our borders in America, for example, and just generate all the diesel fuel we want, regardless of what else is happening in the world. We need other mixtures of oil, including, Saudi Arabian oil, for example, to fuel the refineries. So the lack of oil trade, even though we are a net energy exporter in America, the lack of oil trade impacts our ability to produce some of these fuels. On top of that, countries like China, for example, have completely halted their export of refined fuels, such as kerosene, jet fuel, diesel, et cetera. That's affecting Australia. This is why Australia's airlines are going to end up being grounded. And Australia is a massive, large continent, and there's a lot of road miles required to live and work in Australia. That's going to get strongly impacted, strongly shut down. And again, that's why EV sales are skyrocketing in Australia right now, which is extraordinary. But, to answer your question, it doesn't take much to lead to a collapse scenario because our modern civilization is far more fragile than people thought. Nobody thought about the fact that so much of the world's abundance and food went through one narrow strait, 20 kilometers wide or whatever it is, that can be closed off very simply just by a credible threat from Iran to say we will harass ships. Therefore, no one's allowed to pass unless you pay in yuan or you pay the toll or whatever. So our civilization is very fragile. We stand on the verge of a planetary scale collapse of the system that has kept 8 billion people alive.
I want to ask about the petrodollar because it's a shaky system as it is. It was negotiated through backdoor negotiations after we promised OPEC leaders we wouldn't do it. And now we are collapsing it ourselves by giving allies and non-allies, all other countries, an incentive to trade outside the petrodollar because we cannot be trusted. What do you think will happen to the U.S. dollar? The petrodollar allows us to spend and rack up debt. That's the reason we can do it. So what happens when that collapses? We will have to feel the nearly $40 trillion in debt we've got. That sounds horrific for the world we're handing off to our kids. What do you think of that domino effect that I'm laying out here?
You're exactly right. You just described it. The repatriation of the inflationary effects of fiat currency creation will be devastating to American consumers. We're going to be living in impoverishment across the United States of America. And also countries that are already struggling financially, such as Japan, are about to offload hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. treasuries as a means of their own financial survival because of what's happening there. Trump has, in the meantime, punished our allies like Taiwan through tariffs that are punitive, as well as 301 sanctions that are punishing Taiwan for being really good friends of ours and exporting microchips, for example, to the United States and making them affordable. And then they get punished for excess production. What is that? And India gets punished for purchasing oil from Russia. So the U.S. is being a bad neighbor on the world stage under Trump. And sadly, the American people will suffer as more and more countries choose alternatives to the petrodollar. That's where this is headed.
And so with this austerity, do you see these lockdowns on a large scale where you talked about EV, the electric car piece of this? I can't help but think that this push, it's all intentional, right? This plan has been in place for decades to move us in this way, in this 2030 agenda, and get us to stay home, use electric energy instead of gasoline, ration how much we're allowed to eat, tell us that we're not allowed to eat beef, all of these things. So it seems obvious. It seems obvious, I think, to the three of us sitting here. I guess what comes next? Will we see wide-scale power disruptions? What is your sense of looking at this, playing this out, sort of gaming this out, I guess, on a chessboard?
Well, as you know, I believe that the big picture is the widespread replacement of human cognition and labor with either AI agents on the cognition side and AI-powered robots, which we just saw introduced again, with Melania there in the White House.
Yeah.
And even she was saying that these can basically replace teachers, which is technically true, but it shows you what they are up to. As AI cognition gains in technology, and Jensen Huang recently said that he believes that it's already achieved AGI. I have jokingly responded and said AGI is not a very high threshold because the average human worker is not that smart. So, there's still a lot more upside to go on that. But robotics is making a lot of advances. And when you begin to replace labor, which will be a gradual thing, it'll happen over the next 10 years. It will take time. Then the question becomes, well, what is our government's plan for us as human beings when we cannot meaningfully participate in this economy? And I believe that these fuel and food lockdowns, scarcity and rationing are just the opening chapters of what they have in store for us.
What do you see over the next week to 2 weeks? Because we're really at the beginning of this. We haven't even felt the ripple effects yet. Like we're using up stuff left in the pantry, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Americans in particular are in a much more generous situation compared to people in the Philippines or other countries. I was just checking, my staff orders bulk food supplies from farmers in America. We are still able to order food that was grown last season. And my understanding is that at least half of American farmers got the fertilizer that they needed for this current planting season. The real question for America is going to be the next planting season, late summer or fall. That's where we're going to see a lot of fertilizer scarcity in place if we don't get the Strait of Hormuz opened between now and then. So America itself has more of a buffer than almost every other country in the world, other than perhaps Russia, or probably just Russia. But a lot of other countries are going to suffer, and as they bid up fuel prices, many American oil companies will end up selling American oil to other countries because they make more on that, and that will drive up prices domestically for the American consumer. So price increases, but not Mad Max yet.
Yeah, it's weird to me as, a mother of 3, housewife. I go to the market and I'm like, we're not panicking about this, but we panicked about COVID, which had a low mortality rate. But this, like, hey, everybody, put peanut butter in your cart. Like, that's how I feel all the time.
Maybe there's cognitive dissonance in the United States, Mike, because like David on our staff here, he's in Thailand, and he said that he's never seen lines like this, right, David? I mean, it's
yeah, correct. And I was going to say in the other part you're talking about, the Thailand economy is basically run on motorbikes. I mean, they deliver everything, mail, everything. So if the gas is gone, you're going to shut down the whole economy here.
Yeah, I haven't seen long lines yet.
The fleet there is in trouble because of a lack of diesel, so they're not fishing as much as they used to either. So a lot of their big seafood exports are halted.
Oh.
So the United States, I guess my cognitive dissonance point, I think there's, people just still running to Costco, still living their life. They're not really seeing it yet. They're seeing gas prices going up, $1, $2, diesel prices going up significantly across the country. As I mentioned, nearly 30% in some areas. That's why the U.S. Postal Service is asking for this fuel surge charge to be added to packages. But for the average American yet, maybe they're not seeing it in the way that the people in Thailand or the Philippines are seeing it.
Well, Clayton, if more Americans just watched Redacted, they would be well informed and they could get ahead of this. The sad part is that people just don't have the information. They have busy lives. They're taking care of whatever, and they're just catching glimpses of news from bad sources that won't tell them the truth. So that's why I'm honored to be on your show, and I love the work that you're doing, and I'm happy to come back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Follow him on X. Really one of my favorite voices. Really incisive. Always great to see you, Mike. Thanks so much. We'll be checking in with you as well. Thanks, Mike, as always.
All right. Take care.
Cheers, Mike. All right. Coming up, we're going to talk to Colonel McGregor and Colonel Dan Davis about the latest troop deployments and what this looks like over the next 24 hours. Trump likes to carry out his wars on a Friday evening when the markets are closed. So 2 a.m. Tel Aviv time. Is that when the sirens will go off? What will a U.S. troop invasion look like? Because all signs are pointing to that. So we'll talk about that coming up next.
Also, let us know in the chat, how are you feeling about your own home situation? Are you stocking up on certain supplies? Are you thinking about maybe gas reserves? Are you,
not fear buying, but just prepping like we all should be doing on a regular basis
emergency
anyway.
Supplies. Like, are you feeling like, and again, it's not about panic buying like during the pandemic for things that'll rot in your freezer, but putting through maybe a longer stock in your pantry. I'm just curious how you guys are all coping.
Indeed. All right. Before we get there, we want to tell you about our friends over at Lear Capital, because right now, I don't know if you've seen gold and silver prices getting hammered, like the back and forth volatility right now, sort of the panic buying led to higher prices in the gold market, then the pullback, and then people trying to, I don't know, play that market because the US dollar and what's happening with the stock market, all of it. Massive fear, volatility right now. I'm a big believer in real tangible assets, gold and silver. I have been for years, and real estate. Those are like my three favorites, because they can't take those away from you. Those are the real tangible assets, and they've sustained for thousands of years. Go back 5,000 years, right? As every government currency in world history has collapsed, gold and silver have sustained. And so just have a phone call with our friends at Lear Capital. They're an American company. Been with them for years. That's how we buy our gold and silver. You can have it shipped right to your house. Store it in your gun safe if you want to. I saw someone the other day saying, the only way that I buy gold is having it shipped to my house. I don't want it held in some outside facility. And hey, you do whatever you want to do. You know, we obviously use an outside facility that under 24-hour security that can watch it. You can have it stored in your gun safe if you want. But if you've got money sitting in US dollars, I would be very leery, get it? Of having my money sitting in US dollars, $40 trillion in debt. Where does this go from here? Again, who knows? Who knows where this goes? But anyway, at least protecting your family right now, the best way to do that, in my mind, is through precious metals. So give them a call, 1-800-613-3557. Go to learredacted.com is the website, or just get on the phone and have a free phone call with them and just see if it's right for you. Have a conversation with them. You can receive up to $20,000 in free bonus metals with a qualified purchase. They are an American company. You will not get outsourced to India to answer your calls. They're an American team that will answer you in English. Imagine that. So 1-800-613-3557 is the place to go. And we will make sure that you guys get connected. They're a great team. Let us know in the comments here. And any questions you guys have, as we're going to bring in a few moments here, Colonel Douglas Macgregor, Colonel Daniel Davis, to talk about these troop deployments in the Middle East. We're going to talk about both of that, both with them in a moment. But get in your super chats. Any kind of questions you have for the two colonels, would love to hear from you guys and any of your questions. I heard the other day from a great guest on the show. She's a former FBI whistleblower, testified before Congress. She was responsible for really identifying Zacarias Moussaoui before the 9/11 terror attacks. And she was pulling her hair out trying to tell the FBI, look at this guy. He's flying these aircraft, all of that. She said, I love Colonel Macgregor. I love Colonel Davis. She said, what I love about them is that they didn't reach the level of generals where then they get bought out. They sort of get co-opted by some of the deep state. They are really in the trenches, and they know more than just about anybody. And so I never heard that before, but I loved her take on that. So anyway, so with that, we want to look at what's going on right now in the Middle East with these troop deployments. As I mentioned just a short time ago, and I will do it again, we're getting word about what special forces have been sent to the region. And I want to kind of give you an update what I just heard just a short time ago, that the 82nd Airborne Division unit being deployed, that has been reported publicly. I can also tell you, according to our sources, that Green Berets from the 7th Group, the GSB Battalion, who also got transferred to the 82nd Airborne Division, are also headed to the region. Also, some in the 7th Special Forces Unit that got transferred to the 10th Special Forces Unit, which is in charge of the European sector. All of this unfolding. Of course, President Trump likes to start wars on Friday evenings when the markets are closed, because his personality is tied to what the stock market is doing. And so when it's crashing, he doesn't like that. So Friday nights into 2 a.m. in Tel Aviv time is when the last round of attacks started this war. Sirens going off in Tel Aviv at 2 a.m. Are we likely to see U.S. troops landing at that time? I do want to bring in now Colonel Douglas Macgregor, Colonel Daniel Davis, to have a deep dive discussion, no pun intended, Colonel Davis, the host, the name of your show, about these troop deployments and where we see things going. Welcome to both of you on this Thursday.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
And thanks, Colonel. Oh, I think Colonel's muted. Is Colonel Douglas? Doug, are you muted?
You want me to start?
No, okay. No, I just wanted to say hello. Just hello.
I was sitting quietly on a log here, waiting to be told.
I don't boss any of you guys around. I just listen. I listen intently. So, when you look at these latest troop deployments and what we're hearing and not hearing, what stands out to you? Let me start with you, Doug. Where do you see what are you seeing over the last few hours that really it makes your hair stand up on end?
My hair normally doesn't stand up on end no matter what happens. But I think we have enough forces to probably control much of Los Angeles if that's what we need to do. I don't think this is a significant commitment of any kind that is going to change the outcome of the war. I think what's important for people to understand is that President Trump right now faces the very real probability of total humiliation. Humiliation at home and humiliation overseas, because all of his talk and bombast about destroying, defeating, subduing Iran, and wielding the righteous saber of justice, namely the U.S. armed forces against the evil mullahs, all that crap is going to go away. And people are going to say, what are you doing? What have you done? And I think what we're getting ready to do right now is launch what we call historically a so-called war-winning offensive. And this reminds me a lot of Market Garden in September 1944, where we decided that, if we could secure some bridges, we were home free, we could march into Germany, and the whole war would be over by Christmas. There were considerably more troops and assets involved, but as we all know, it failed miserably. And I think what they're doing right now is they're going back over all of the target lists that they've attacked in the past. They're revisiting all of those, looking at all the satellite photography, any new intelligence that they can get. They're replenishing the stocks of exotic munitions, joint attack, surface-to-surface missiles, all kinds of other weapons, with the goal of launching probably sometime in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere in there, a nonstop 96-hour sort of pulverization of everything in Iran. And while this is going on, I think they're going to try and find a way to insert the light infantry into the Persian Gulf, into these islands in the Strait of Hormuz. There are a couple of them. And of course, the famous Karg Island. Now, what's the problem with all of this? Well, once again, we're the World War II force reenacting World War II, and the Iranians are not in World War II, they're in World War III, and World War III is very different. Everything that happens, they can see. They have constant, uninterrupted, persistent surveillance of the entire area. They also have precision-guided weapons. Everything is precision-guided, missiles, drones, whatever, and they can reach out almost 1,000 miles with these weapons and attack very effectively. And we don't have, at the moment, inside the Persian Gulf, the means to protect those Marines and paratroopers if we use them. And I don't know how they get from wherever they start to be in a position to do very much, because once again, the Iranians can see everything. And then it's simply a decision of how long do they wait before they target us. And if they try to fly in B-22s or UH-60s helicopters, well, they're going to fly low, presumably, and everything under 15,000 feet can be acquired and effectively attacked by Iranian air defenses. So I think this is a dumb idea. I don't think it'll work, but I could be wrong, and it could be enormously successful, in which case then you get the complete disintegration of Iranian society and the state and chaos across the region that'll spill all the way into Europe.
Colonel Davis, Colonel McGregor brings up the Allied operations, Operation Market Garden. Others have suggested this could turn into World War I Gallipoli disaster, trying to unseat the Ottoman Empire, really, and wind up in a bloodbath. Where do you see it? And anything you agree with, disagree with what Doug just said?
Yeah, and the interesting thing, first of all, this is less than 30 minutes ago on Trump Truth Social. We were all worried about what might be happening this weekend, because the deadline that he extended from the ultimatum was supposed to have expired tomorrow. And he just now says, as per Iranian government request, Please let this statement serve as a represent that I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 additional days to Monday, April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by fake news media and others, they are going very well. So, I mean, yeah, the part of the issue is, man, how do you take anything President Trump says at face value? Whether that's earlier today where he said, again, they're already completely destroyed. They hardly have any missiles and drones left, and they are definitely wanting to negotiate. At the same time, Foreign Minister Arakci repeated again on state television with all these images on the side of the camera of all these people around the country celebrating and supporting their country and their government. So he obviously has their support, is the point being of that. And then as President Trump was making that statement, you had Trey Yingst on Fox News with all the sirens in the background. He's wearing his Kevlar helmet. As he said, the 10th barrage from Iran today was in the process of being landed, and that was even before dark. Who knows how many they may get later tonight. But, I mean, every physical thing you can see shows that Iran is very far from a defeated foe, and in fact, they have their hand around the Strait of Hormuz, and therefore 20% of the global oil supply, also the natural gas, and also the fertilizers and all the other feedstocks that are necessary to feed a good portion of the globe. So they are definitely in the driver's seat here. When you think that you're going to go in with a few troops here and there and have a spot, Doug said there about Market Garden. That's exactly what I was thinking. The same kind of thing. And Gallipoli. I've shown both of those on the show earlier today, in fact, about how the similarities are and the difficulties, and we don't even have as many assets. I also had somebody on from the British Navy, a retired Commodore, who took place in a ground operation in the Falklands War, where he said he was part of a battle group that got a smaller number of people ashore and trying to do the same kind of thing. And he said they lost 4 ships in the process. That's back then. That was before you had a lot of missiles and drones and all this other kind of stuff. And even that was more difficulty. Every one of these operations that Doug was talking about in here, they all come with a pretty high price tag. And that's if you have it thought out well and there's a plausible military prep hope that it's going to succeed. This doesn't have that. This is one of those, to me, Doug, you say whatever you think. To me, this looks like it's just flying by the seat of your pants, figuring stuff out on the fly and say, throwing something at the wall and see if it'll stick. It's not been resourced. It's not been rehearsed. It's not been equipped. And this just has disaster written all over it. And I pray that this statement here about, we're going to wait 10 days, hopefully that's not just for the energy, but it's trying to find an off-ramp here. I really hope that's the case.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug. Do you want to respond to that? Hope you're muted. Is that on our side?
No, it's on our side.
Oh, okay. It's on Doug's side.
Oh, he muted
It's
himself.
automatically muting me. It must be innocent. Anyway,
Go ahead.
let's look at a couple of other data points that I think we need to take into consideration. England, that is Great Britain, is just about out of oil. They figure that in 2 weeks they'll be completely out of oil. You have a similar situation, by the way, in Australia. And I was amazed to discover that Australia doesn't have a single refinery. So that country could come to a complete screeching halt in the very near future. They have to look at the impact on India, where they have millions of people lined up at the gas pump trying to buy refined gasoline. The only one that seems to be doing really well at this point is Russia. Russia is making an additional $250 million per day on top of what it was already earning every single day. So while the Strait of Hormuz bleeds commercial traffic, Russian oil becomes more and more valuable. And if you look at Asia and Europe, and now I think we're seeing this begin to get into North Africa and perhaps other parts of Africa, there is a food, fuel, fertilizer, and feed crisis developing. In other words, the financial, economic consequences are building such that if Trump cannot declare victory very soon, the rest of the world is going to come down on him very hard and say, stop, the war is killing us. So that's the first thing. And then when you look at these islands that are targeted, the question you have to ask is, assuming you could get there, what do they do for you? invasion or blockade of Karg Island, all right, go ahead and do that. What difference is it going to make? That's not the only place where oil can be shipped out by Iran. And if you do this, if you go in great strength into the Persian Gulf, that shuts the movement down, excuse me, of vessels through the straits to zero. Right now, it's dropped off by about 95%. So the 5% that are getting through, tankers headed to India, tankers headed to Japan, tankers headed to China, they'll be stopped as well. Now, China has a substantial reserve of oil, many months left. That's not the case with most everybody else. So I think the whole idea right now is, yes, they want a war-winning offensive. Can they do it from the air? Is an attack inside the Gulf going to do any good? And if they do these things, what else are they going to hit? Are they going to hit desalination plants and power plants in Iran, in which case everything on the other side of the Gulf, up and down on the eastern side, western side, is going to be destroyed. And it'll take decades to recover from this kind of damage. So I just think a lot of people in Washington are disconnected from reality right now, most of all the Pentagon and the president.
I'll throw this out to both of you, Colonels. The Pentagon, according to Dave DeCamp, commenting on Axios reporting this afternoon, the Pentagon is developing options for a potential major escalation against Iran that could involve ground troops. U.S. officials and other sources speaking to Axios reporter Barak Ravid, former IDF intelligence officer, described the potential escalation as, quote, a final blow that would give Trump more leverage and room to declare victory, though all indications are that Iran is ready to face ground forces and that any such operation would prolong the war. We heard from the Iranian reports today from Iran saying that they are mobilizing upwards of 1 million fighters for a potential ground war, according to Iranian sources, and also being reported by Al Jazeera. So, Colonel Davis, final blow that would give Trump more leverage. But I'm confused because Trump in the past few days has been telling us that this war is over, that we've won, and that any discussion around that is fake news. So why would we have to have an invasion and a final blow if the war is already over? And I'm just confused.
Well, yeah. And this just goes on to show that just the disconnected from reality that President Trump is. And by the way, I wanted to add this one other data point that Doug just mentioned here is the Iran conflict is endangering Taiwan's semiconductor industry by throttling supply of vital materials such as helium, aluminum, and bromine, and crucially energy, as Iran-backed shipping routes jeopardize over a third of Taiwan's Qatari liquefied natural gas, which they need to make these threats. So you're talking about there's also a near-term threat to even to the semiconductor industry. This is just having tentacles all over the global economy, not just the fact of the global, the oil itself. So that's putting pressure literally all over the world that Doug was talking about on President Trump to get this over with. And I think that the allure of having, let's go in with one big blow here and it's going to win it. I'll just tell you, there is no one big blow that you can level. We fired 10,000 strikes so far of everything that we have. And I'm talking bunker busters, these big ones, JASSMs, the Tomahawks, you name it. We've been firing everything. And obviously, it's now almost background noise for the Iranians. They have figured out how to endure this, and they could go on probably indefinitely like this. So the only thing that you could theoretically do is bring in a tactical nuclear weapon. And God help us all if that's the case. If Trump has some idea that he's going to have a big once and for all kind of thing, I don't even know what else you can bring in that even theoretically could bring in one final blow, because there is nothing. You've already attacked everything, and now we're attacking things multiple times in some cases. And so I don't know what they're talking about. There's no conventional answer for that, I'll just tell you. But the pressure on President Trump to get this over with fast is about to start striking big time here at home, in the Middle East, in Europe, and of course now you see also in Asia. So this is a disaster of epic proportions. It's unfolding before our eyes. And you can understand why President Trump is desperate to get this over with. And that may lead to desperate actions that have even less a chance of success. And I worry a lot about what could be coming.
Doug, I get you to respond to that. I think you're spot on. But where would these troops, do you think, be landing? There's lots of speculation. You mentioned Karg Island. We've had other people say Konarak, which is a port a port area there. And then Benjamin Netanyahu today released a video where it looks like the backdrop behind him is Konorok, as if sort of like telegraphing, or as a feint behind him in his background that, you know, almost like the deception before the Normandy landings. You know, we're going to try to, everyone thinks you're going to land at Calais because it's close, you know, it's as close to the UK as possible. And then you get Monty out there parading around looking like he's about to lead this invasion across Calais. And then it happens at the Normandy beaches, right? All of this deception was happening. But when you look at the Strait of Hormuz, like how much deception can there actually be? I mean, you've got Kuwait, but you've got eyes and ears everywhere.
Well, that's the bottom line. Deception, I think, is an impossibility. That doesn't mean that the Iranians have to be everywhere at once. They just have to have numerous weapon systems within range of any of the potential targets, and that's what they've got. They can sit 150 kilometers inside Iran from north to south, and they can take under fire very effectively any of the potential targets that we've mentioned. The question is, first of all, if you're in the Marines, you've got to come ashore. How are you going to do that? Are you going to fly directly from your amphibious carriers, or perhaps from the Navy's carriers, fly from there to some point on land? Do you then get out and reorganize and get ready to go and then fly further? I mean, this is a very complex operation. There's not, as Dan said, there's not much time to get ready for it. So I'm hopeful that as we progress in the days ahead, that we can avoid the whole thing altogether. Now, that may not be possible, but here's another data point. This just came into me. This is from Channel 13 in Israel. It was originally in Hebrew. It was translated for me. And it says, the chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Force warned last night in a cabinet meeting, the Israeli army is on the verge of collapse from within. I'm raising 10 red flags, Zamir added. The army now needs a conscription law, a reserve law, and a law to extend mandatory service. The reserves will not hold up. He said these things in front of the prime minister, heads of the security apparatus, and ministers. So I think we have to understand that the nation for which we're fighting, which is really Israel, is a real problem. They've got an enormous problem on their hands. And I don't know how they're going to solve their problems, but we can't solve that problem for them, what happens internally. So bottom line is, I think the whole thing has reached a strategic inflection point. And they have to make a decision pretty quickly because of the economic circumstances as to what they're going to do next. And the notion initially is going to be double down. Keep doing something which has failed thus far in the hopes that it will produce success. I think that's where we're headed. I don't think it's going to produce success.
I want to ask both of you, we have some super chats come in for some questions here. The German Rabbit asks this question. Clayton, ask the colonels how the Russians and the Chinese would react to an American draft mobilization. We saw the increase, obviously, in the enlistment age in the United States. But maybe take that question and then also just the Chinese-Russian piece of this story. We heard from President Putin today saying that what we are about to see from an energy perspective is going to be worse than COVID. And the Russians saying that Europe, the UK, will be begging Russia for oil and natural gas. We heard that from Dmitriev, a diplomat from Russia. So first on just the draft question, Dan, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. Look, I think that would be just domestic disaster to try and have a draft. I mean, I think that they have extended the ages here because I think that there are those in the Pentagon and apparently the White House that are saying, hey, if this thing goes south, this war here, I mean, we could just get sucked in and we may need more people. We better start getting them right now. And so you want to try to do that, quietly if you can, by just allowing more people to come in and join by extending the ages here. That's not going to work. Number one, I doubt there are very many people that are in that age that are also qualified and desire to come in. And if you go into a draft situation, I mean, there's a reason why we got rid of the draft that got us out of the Vietnam War, and why they went to the all professional military, and why we've used it so easily since that way, because you affect such a small portion of the population. But if you now start going back into that, to where you're now pulling these kids from all over the country who have no interest in or desire to serve, and force them into a war that they don't, you're going to have a revolt on your hands. I truly believe that. I don't think it would work anymore. I think that day is past, unless we had a Pearl Harbor type thing where somebody attacked us out of nowhere. And then even then, it wouldn't be, I don't think, the reaction, because our population isn't the same as it was in 1941. So I don't think we would react the same way. But there would be a number of people that would do that to take care of the country, but not this. Not a war of choice that we went into. The only reason you're doing a draft is because you ignored everybody's advice that had any sense, like Doug McGregor, and you went down this path because he was saying, even on my own show several times for months ahead of this, what a disaster this would be. And it's unfolding just like he said, and in some ways even worse. And people would see that then, and they're going to go, no, I'm not going to send my son or daughter into death here. I mean, we're not going to do that. So I think that if you get to that point, you're going to have a revolt on your hand.
Of course, likely not to have another Pearl Harbor, because now with alternative media and our show, I know I would be immediately out there saying, oh, did the president know about this ahead of time and allow this to happen, just like Pearl Harbor? False flag. I think 1941 looks a lot different now with alternative media. I think you would have a disaster on your hands. Doug, what do you think on the draft question and Russia, China in all of this?
Well, first on the draft question, we went to a volunteer army, and it had the same impact as going off the gold standard. Once we went off the gold standard, we could print as much money as we wanted and use it any way we wanted to. There was no longer any accountability. There was no longer a need to raise taxes to pay for military operations.
Right.
So that's effectively why we went to the volunteer army, and everybody in Washington loves that. So I see no evidence that they're going to try and draft anybody, because I think Dan's absolutely right. And I can just see that Baron Cameron and Lutnick's children and Witkoff's sons, and let's just go down the list, Kushner's, I can see them all rushing to go fight against Iran for Greater Israel. I don't think so. I'd be very surprised.
Right.
So no, I don't see a draft coming at all. Now, then there's the other thing. The Chinese and the Russians have been watching this in disbelief. Everybody thinks, well, they're our enemies. Okay. Most of them would just like to do business with the rest of the world, and they're not interested in going to war with us. And I think they view our thinking as incredibly stupid. They can't believe we're doing the things that we're doing. But what they will do, if we continue down this road and there's no evidence whatsoever that we're willing to get off, you will have both Moscow and Beijing will try first to talk directly to President Trump. And they'll say, look, this has got to stop for the sake of the world, for the world economy, for everybody. We don't want Iran to collapse. If you're trying to destroy Iran and you succeed, millions and millions of refugees will pour over the border into Turkey, into Syria, into Iraq. Eventually, they'll find their way to Europe. This is a catastrophe. So we don't want this to happen. I don't think that will get that far, but I'm sure that that's on the minds of both Putin and I even think the German chancellor, as deranged as he is capable of understanding the implications of that, along with Macron. And I think that's why they both said, forget it. We're not going to participate in this crazy war. But in the final analysis, all of this, unfortunately, rests with Donald Trump. And if he can't find a way to declare victory, then he's going to face a very difficult time in Washington, D.C. This could actually force him out of office. And since everything with him is mortgaged to vanity, I worry a great deal about what Dan mentioned, which is the possibility that somebody says, we'll use a tactical nuclear weapon. And we all know what that means. You use a tactical nuclear weapon, which is a misnomer, doesn't exist. Then others who have nuclear weapons are immediately on alert, and there's a real danger of everybody getting involved. So I hope that doesn't happen.
Got another super chat here.
And Clayton, sorry, one thing I want to add to that. Sorry, I had a problem with my camera there. Quick move.
No
you talk about China and Russia. There's one thing that hasn't gotten enough focus yet. I'm sure it'll get that way as time goes on. But there's a real problem that is developing that China and Russia are definitely paying attention to. And that is when President Trump, and a lot of people have been saying forever, America is the most powerful military country in the history of the world. No one else is even close. Trump says that all the time. And now then they see we can't even bring Iran to its heels. And we don't have enough ammunition to defend against Iranian missiles. And we don't have enough offensive missiles to do anything that's going to bring them to their heels. I promise you, China's going, okay, if we were worried about the United States like in a Taiwan scenario or something like that, I think that their fear of us has gone way down in their recognition that the paucity of our industrial capacity, however, the few amount of missiles we have, the technical limitations of the interceptor missiles, whether that's PAC-3 or THAAD, I think that they're looking at their production rates and their storage rates, and they're looking, we can saturate anything you got, and you're keeping your ships far away from Iran, and they don't even have a navy effectively. We've destroyed their surface combatants. They still have the speedboats, and they're a big danger to us despite what we claim. But in terms of even a brown or blue water navy, they don't have that. China does. And I think the same thing with the Russians. They're saying, hey, man, if we had to fight you on the European soil somewhere, I think that their confidence and their capabilities it went even higher than it already was, which was pretty high. We are exposing that we are not this incredible military machine. And in fact, we're a lot weaker than people thought, no matter what the president says.
Oh, for sure. I couldn't agree more with you, and I believe Doug agrees with you 100% on that. Here's a question. Here's a question from Blueskin. Says, do you guys think that the military would recall veterans even if they're outside their IRR time?
It's been done before. I think so. A lot of people, when they retire or leave the service, they fill out a form, and the form says, if there's a national emergency or there's a requirement, are you willing to come back and serve? And most people sign that and say yes. So I think I think they could do a lot of things to bring more people back, but it's not the answer. It's not going to change the outcome. This is not a function of how many men under arms you've got. The from conception or inception to where we are now is a disaster. It's never been carefully thought through. All of the underlying assumptions were always flawed because we mirror image. We assume that the enemy, whoever it is, always thinks like us. That's never the case. We impute things to the Chinese, to the Russians, we did it to the Germans, the Japanese. It doesn't work. The other thing is that we prefer assumptions we like over the evidence. Instead of digging hard and saying, where's the evidence for this assumption? We say, yeah, I believe that. That's good. Let's go with that. And then finally, there's this tragic predisposition to dismiss the possibility that it won't work. And then what do? How do you get out of it? I mean, if we put all these troops out there, and I know it's only 10,000, still a lot of American manpower in uniform that could be spread across the Persian Gulf and these various islands and places. If it all falls apart, how do we get them out? Besides that, how do you ensure they have water? How do you replenish the ammunition? I mean, all of this kind of stuff. I just don't think anybody's thought it all through.
Dan,
let me piggyback off of that.
Yeah, please.
Because the great example of that, one of the points Doug just made about that we are operating on our preference. This is what we would prefer. This is the outcome we'd like to have. And then even if the evidence isn't there, and we certainly don't do any research for it, we just go with it because that's what we want to do. Lindsey Graham has been talking about this a lot by saying, hey, we can take Carg Island. He was seen on, I think it was CBS News over the weekend, I think it was. And they said, hey, look, this Atlantic Journal here says there's a lot of problems going into Carg. And it was a pretty good military assessment of the challenges. And he goes, yeah, I don't care what that Monday morning armchair colonel says or whoever that was. I believe in the U.S. Marines, and they can do Iwo Jima, and they can definitely do this. And I about fell out of my chair because I'm like, dude, the difference between Iwo Jima and Carg Island is about as different as night is from day. And he either doesn't know, doesn't care to know, or doesn't want to find out. It's just like, that's what I want to be true, so it is. And Trump listens to guys like this. And then Keith Kellogg, oh my God, his advice here lately is, yeah, we'll just roll up the Persian Gulf with a couple of Marine ships there in the Boxer and the Tripoli. And yeah, we'll just take the first part and then we'll motor on up to the next part like it's no problem. And I'm like, my God, if these are the men that are advising President Trump, no wonder we're making so many bad mistakes.
Yeah, the point that, Doug, you've been making for a long time is like, we have this 1945 style military that's still built for like a World War II military. So we're going to just roll in more aircraft carriers and that's going to work. You saw what happened with USS, Gerald Ford. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be permanently stationed there just off the coast of the island of Hormuz, just making sure that ships are going through and the Iranians won't attack those ships. It's madness.
It really is madness. And the other thing that disturbs me about people like Lindsey Graham, 19,000 Marines died in the Pacific seizing islands. Nobody knows that. I don't think he understands what that means. Frankly, not all of those islands, by the way, needed to be seized. That's another tragedy. And 58,000 airmen died in the 8th Air Force trying to penetrate German air defenses. Now, what I'm trying to get across is how many ballistic missiles does it take to achieve what I would call mass casualties? If you put 3,000, 4,000 men on a particular island and you can pepper the island with these ballistic missiles, how many of them will be killed? That's the whole point. And what are we asking them to die for? What gives us an assurance that seizing a particular rock in the Persian Gulf is suddenly going to prompt the complete opening and abandonment of the Straits of Hormuz by the Iranians? Well, there's nothing that will do that. And by the way, if you used a tactical nuclear weapon and you think at that point the Iranians would throw on the towel, I've got news for you. I think the opposite would happen. I think they'd be working tirelessly to hurl a nuclear weapon back in our faces as soon as they could develop one or receive one from someone else. So I just don't see anything positive emerging from this succession of events that we're witnessing. This has been wrong-headed from the beginning. And this was something that I think Donald Trump knew he was going to have to do when he was elected because of the people that paid for his election.
Guys, I'll get you out of here in just a minute. I wanted to have you maybe talk. You mentioned it briefly, Doug, just on the Americans killed number. We had Dr. Trita Parsi on the show yesterday who learned that within 24 hours of this outbreak, they had classified the number of casualties. And he made the point that you don't classify casualty numbers if you're happy about those casualty numbers. The numbers of American dead, American wounded have been very tight-lipped from the Pentagon. What are you hearing maybe from your sources, or what's your assessment? Do you believe the official number that they're telling us? Dan, first to you.
No. But then again, I don't believe much of what comes out of the government.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said a minute ago, while President Trump is talking about how he has destroyed Iran and they don't even have the ability to launch missiles or drones, as he's speaking, a 10th round was falling on Israel at the moment. So I don't trust a single thing that comes out of them. And, we've seen the Iranians have claimed, and they did again this afternoon, they said there's over 500 American killed and I think like 1,800 wounded or so. I certainly don't take that at face value either. And it could certainly be for domestic cases to make their people feel better. I don't trust a single thing out there. But, man, with all this firepower and when we've had to move out of 13 different bases, according to the New York Times analysis, it just doesn't seem like there's going to be that few casualties. Maybe there is. Maybe we've gotten really lucky. Maybe the defenses have been good. But I trust nothing, unfortunately.
Dan, you brought up the last question that I just was about to ask both of you, which is the New York Times report on these 13 American bases, which the New York Times now says have largely been destroyed. They're uninhabitable. The Iranians yesterday announced that they know that Americans who were stationed there, commanders and soldiers, have fled, and some of them in hiding or outside of those bases, and they are pursuing them. Their words, pursuing them. In other words, hunting them down, I would assume. What's your assessment of these American bases in the region? And by the way, they told us they were going to do this in the same way they told us that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be shut down. Like this is somehow news to the Trump administration. That's kind of shocking. But Doug, first to you on these American bases, this New York Times report.
Well, initially they hit 27 of them. So there were 27 bases damaged. Now they're saying that 13 are totally demolished. They've eliminated all of the expensive early warning radars that we had placed in the region. And this has hurt us badly, particularly in Israel, because they don't get the several minutes of early warning time that they were getting previously. They're hearing, that you've got to get into the underground shelters and you've got like 60 seconds or a minute and a half to get there. And this is taking its toll in Israel. I think, the problem is, once again, we were victims of our own happy, rosy scenario. And I don't know how else to put it, Dan, do you?
I don't. And, we're at the mercy of what people in the region are reporting because, I hardly can trust anything that's coming out of reporters either. But based on the paucity of our responses, I think it's pretty likely that there's been a lot of casualties. You've got the Navy has been moved back allegedly somewhere around 1,000 miles away from the Iranian shore. So they're not doing anything good. Most of our aircraft, according to reports I'm getting, that we're still doing, despite what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said on like the fourth or fifth day, we're now still doing stand off because when we try to do stand in, we have what happened with that F-35 the other day. It gets knocked out of the sky, or the MQ-9 Reapers, they get knocked out, which is also making it more difficult to do targeting because we don't have that persistent stare over there. And everything that we're using so far is a lot less effective than what it's claimed to be. So that's why we circle back around. It seems like the casualties are probably going to be higher, and one wonders if we're ever going to be told the truth.
I guess a final question on Iran's capability, guys, which is, you mentioned the 10,000 strikes so far. We've hit them with just about everything. Is Iran still holding back? Do we still have lots of hypersonic missiles? Do they still have this capacity to strike and they've been holding back in large capacity? Do we have any sense of how much of their munitions have been totally destroyed, downgraded?
Well, my impression is that they have a large number of hypersonic missiles they have yet to fire. That's very clear. They made that clear because they started utilizing older missiles for the purpose of wearing down air and missile defenses, also identifying air and missile defense batteries and radars and so forth. I don't see any evidence that they're about to run out. I mean, if we had believed everything we were told back in 2022, the Russians were running out of missiles and ammunition and tanks and everything else by Christmas of 2022, and the war was going to be over. So again, I go back to Dan. I'm very skeptical of whatever we're told. And remember that the Iranians have spent at least 2+ decades getting ready for exactly this event. So I suspect they have a lot left over. And frankly, don't underestimate the ability of the Chinese in particular, which is a giant manufacturing base, to replenish their losses. I think we have to take that into consideration. Luke Groman was on the other day, one of my favorite people in terms of financial analysis, and he pointed out, the Chinese have said we can build 1,000 rocket motors for cruise missiles in just one day. We're hard pressed to build 20 or 30 rocket motors in a week. When you turn to shipbuilding, it's even worse. We may build a few ships a year. They can build, 800 to 1,000 every year. The Chinese manufacturing capability that lies behind Iran is enormous, and we shouldn't underestimate its ability to resupply Iran.
That's unbelievable. So, we're not marshaling tens of thousands of Higgins boats on a moment's notice out of New Orleans, right, Dan?
Yeah, right. That's one of the things I've been warning about for decades. Really, in the mid 2000s, I was working for the Future Combat Systems program in Fort Bliss, Texas, which was supposed to have been this future warfare organization that we put together so we would have a leap ahead, et cetera, after winning the Cold War. And, I watched us show incredible incompetence at being able to manage anything. And so we were trying to have all these gold-plated weapon systems, and literally none of them ever saw the light of day. We never produced anything. And then they said, well, we'll cancel that after, I think, 6 years and $20 billion worth. And they said, all right, we're going to have the ground combat vehicle. Use the technology of this, and we'll get something next. That didn't work, and then they had another one, then another one, and now we're on. I think it's literally the 5th iteration since 2003 to try to find a next generation leap ahead combat vehicle, and now all we're doing is just continuing to upgrade the M1 from the 1970s technology, for example. And you look at how long it takes us to build a ship, how long it takes us to build, I think it's like 18 months or something to get just even a handful of THAAD interceptors or so. And we have so many high dollar items and they take so long, they're so complicated and so expensive, you can't get very many of them. And now when you get into a situation like we are in right now, to where the majority of our PAC-3 interceptors have been used, and as long as the Iranians keep going on with this sustained rate of fire, which they've got, you're going to run out of them. And then you're going to have to go into some of the older stuff that doesn't work as good, like the PAC-2s, for example. And they're going to be even less capable. If we get into some kind of an unexpected conflict with either Russia or China, North Korea, something like that, we are literally going to be hung out to dry, because we can't replace our ships if we lose those. We can't replace our planes if we lose those. And now then, because we have foolishly chosen a war to use the remainder of our stocks after we gave a bunch to Israel since 2023 and to Ukraine since 2022, we're on E right now. And our industrial capacity is still at snail pace. So we have put ourselves in a strategic vulnerability that it's hard to even imagine. And we just have to hope that there is no Pearl Harbor type moment now, because we are going to be in a world of hurt.
Doug, a final question, which is President Trump said, well, the option is unleash hell. They're not going to end this war, no ceasefire. We're going to unleash hell on them. But to Dan's point, what do we have left? What hell could be unleashed other than using nuclear weapons do we have at our disposal at this stage that we haven't basically run out of?
Well, there's no shortage of bluster and bombast and hot air. That's clear.
That's a good point.
I think we will try to ratchet up the intensity of the strikes. In other words, more strikes with more munitions, more missiles in a shorter period of time than we have done in the past. And I think that's really what the pause is all about. The pause is also there so that you can get some more missiles and things out to the fleet and probably to Germany, and then ultimately down into the region for the Air Force. That's what's going on. I think that's where we're headed. And that's the only answer they can come up with at this stage. And they're hoping that if they can suppress the enemy long enough, that they can safely get Marines and paratroopers into the Persian Gulf to stand on some islands and sort of offer that as evidence for victory. That's about all I can imagine at this stage. And I think that's where we're headed. I don't think it's going to change much. I think things are going to get worse.
And sorry, Clayton, let me jump in real quick. That reminds me of something, Doug, that you told me on our show maybe a month or so before this war came out, is that I had to ask you, how long, with that much combat power that Trump had assembled there, how long could they go before they have to start replenishing? And you said they can probably go about 2, maybe 3 weeks, is what you told me. And now here we are at the 3+ week mark. And now here's this 10-day pause all of a sudden, because you told me they would have to significantly reduce the rate of fire of these things, because then you've used up what you had stored forward, and you're going to have to bring the stuff forward and bring it from other places to include on the ships and in the ground. And I think that's the most likely explanation for this 10-day pause.
Well, I'm glad you explained your question. I was about to say I did not have sex with that woman. I don't know anything about her. I've never met her.
I do need to specify.
Thank you for that clarification. He is a soothsayer, by the way. Gentlemen, Colonel Daniel Davis, Colonel Douglas McGregor, great to see both of you. Thank you so much for this analysis and this deep dive. This is one of those interviews that, while I'm sitting here trying to ingest all of your brilliant analysis, I'm going to go back and rewatch my own interview, which I almost never do because I want to go through point by point and take notes, actually. So thanks to both of you for your incredible analysis on all of this. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Dan. And thanks to all of you for joining us here. We're going to take some of your super chats. You got a lot of them coming in here. I want to get to a couple of them here in just a moment. I do want to do that. But first, I want to thank our friends over at IQ Bar for sponsoring our show. God knows I need all the IQ help I can get. Truly. And this episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes. Their IQ Joe mushroom coffees are delicious. They're fantastic. We keep their IQ Bar hydration mixes in our car because guess what? My son is a migrainer, and we have them on ready. We have like little like safety packages like in our backpack, in our car. He has it in his backpack at school. Like if he starts getting an aura where his vision goes crazy and all that, he takes one of these hydration packets immediately. And you can pick up their Ultimate Sampler Pack. Is a great way to try everything. Their IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 different IQ bars, 8 IQ mix sticks, 4 IQ Joe sticks for your coffee. All of them are clean label certified, entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and official ingredients. They are plant protein bars, smarter snack choices. The kids take them to school and have them, just as a snack before recess and all of that stuff. Really great. Over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting. More people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with an IQ bar, their body boosting bars, their hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. They are delicious. So try their Ultimate Sampler Pack, all 3 of them. It's become part of our family routine on a regular basis. You got to try their IQ Joe. It's really great. Right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text the word redacted to 64,000. Again, text the word redacted to 64,000. That's redacted to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details to get that 20% off. All right. Let's see here. Texas Real 077. Thank you for your super chat. Says, how is Iran different from Vietnam? Trump pulled out of Nam as a Dodger because of a bone spur, right? It wasn't a bone spur. Well, again, we've had guests on the show who said this will be Trump's Vietnam. And the problem with a 4-day war, they told us it was going to be 4 days, as one of our esteemed viewers had texted me or published a comment and said, Clayton, the problem with a 4-day war is that it tends to last 5 years, right? You could say 20 years, you could say 7, it doesn't really matter, but it's not going to be 4 days. It's already longer than 4 days. These promises have fallen apart. By the way, now, if you've seen some of the CPAC coverage, the Conservative Political Action Committee conference, which is going on for a few days, people are being interviewed and saying, yes, the conservative movement coalition has completely fractured because you've got these MAGA nut jobs, people like the cat turds of the world and who are just fully in the tank for this war. You got the Mark Levins of the world who are fully in the tank for this war. The Sean Hannitys of the world. And then you have the rest of the conservative base, most Americans who are like, absolutely not. This is a disaster. We should not be fighting another Middle East war. This is exactly what you told us you wouldn't do. And you're doing the opposite. Not only a Middle East war, but to send American forces there, boots on the ground. You told us at the beginning, no American boots on the ground. 3 weeks ago, you told us that. So the lies are thick and heavy. And if we're doing the bidding of Israel and doing the bidding of Saudi Arabia, which is exactly what we're doing. We reported yesterday MBS, Prince of Saudi Arabia, calling on the President Trump for a protracted war in Iran. He sees this as like a Middle East changing moment and also to put American boots on the ground. On top of Netanyahu's demands that we continue this war. That's the way it goes.
I just, I was while the colonels were talking, while you were talking with the colonels, I was just thinking, like, with all of the bullshit that we're fed about this, all the lies that this is happening, that's not happening. It's like, why bother with the war part? Why not just come out and just say, hey, we did this thing, and we blew up a lot of things. It was great. We won. We brought everybody back.
It's all Agenda 2030. Yeah. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, just why bother with the actual war part? Just come out and just tell us whatever you want, and then maybe
be honest.
Be honest.
Tell us the truth. What we really want is austerity. We want to move all of you to an electric vehicle. We want you to stop eating meat. We want you to stay home. We want you to have a universal basic income and a central bank digital currency and AI control of everything that you do. Like, that's what we really want. So we're going to we don't even need to pretend anymore like that we're going to use the Iranian war as a catalyst for that to happen. Just tell us the truth. Let's see here. If this doesn't inspire grown-ups to take control of the situation, Richard says, nothing will. For a country that cherishes its constitution and amendments, you forget the one that will get you out of this America. You're the new hope. Oh, as far as an amendment, like the 25th Amendment, to have J.D. Vance step in. We already got this one. Thank you, Blue Skin. We asked the generals or the colonels about that. Convene a standing military legal justice system. Rescue of innocents with convened military tribunal authority like Portugal is required. Good luck with that. We'd have to, Congress would have to sign off on that. Laura, not Loomer. I love their screen name. Laura, not Loomer, 6849. We are building garden beds and chicken coops, stocking up when we can, water and food, bought a generator and everything. This is scary. How many of you watching right now have a generator in your house? Let us know. We got a backup system now in place. We had the solar panels and all that. But we got a backup system in place for that purpose. Let us know in the comments here. Oh boy, don't say that. Martin says, who's making the body bags? I want to invest in that. Oh. Where's my Doge check? The body bags come from China. This person says, Rafiq. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. Human batteries are coming soon. EVs are bad in weather. Oops. Baron is a time traveler. So I tried to click on it fast, but someone said EVs are bad in bad weather. Yeah, I know in colder conditions they're pretty bad. I don't know if that's still the case or not. Like if they've kind of tweaked that and fixed that, I'm not really sure. What commands were these colonels in charge of? I know Colonel McGregor has talked about in Iraq, and also I think, I don't know. I know he's mentioned Iraq a few times here, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know about Colonel Davis on the air side of things, I think. All wars are bankster wars, plus all the world's a stage. Everything. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, my friend John. I was like, we are in a simulation. He's like, earlier in the day, I was having the exact same conversation. We are absolutely living in a simulation. Let's see here. They want us to stay home and give a job to a robot unless we go die as cannon fodder in the Middle East. Yeah. I just finished, I like to wind down and play a game from time to time. I've been known to do that, and I enjoyed the game Detroit Become Human. It's like a future, takes place like 30 years or so in the future, where like androids are sort of part of life, And it was a pretty fascinating story because all of these people have basically lost their jobs to these androids that are doing home care, helping elderly, everything. And these people are like really, in dire straits because all of their jobs have been taken over by these AI robots. And this game, by the way, came out like 10 years ago. Like how prescient is it, It's crazy. Let's see. The situation in the Middle East will force countries like the Philippines to change their stance towards China and Russia. Again, war is the great destabilizer, right? It's the great catalyst for change. I believe so. Hey, we have, by the way, I do have another channel. If you want to check out my Clayton Morris channel, where I just kind of hang out and do hobby stuff, take my world off this craziness from time to time, just talk about some technology and games and stuff like that. So if you want to check that out, it's just Clayton Morris on YouTube. Again, it's just like, I need that outlet sometimes because of everything that I deal with here on this show. It can be overwhelming. It really can be. So if you want to come over there and check it out, I'd love to have you if you're into that sort of stuff. If you like tech stuff and games and stuff like that. They serve together. That's right. Let's see. We are a simulated slave race. Yeah, it's true. Someone says I have 2 generators, dry food, guns, gasoline ready for bad times. One thing I don't have is gasoline stocked up. I need to do that. I should go and do that today, actually. Thing is, you got to rotate through that pretty much every 30 days, right? Snowflakes has actually found this channel from your other channel. That's so funny. Actually found Redacted from your Clayton Morris channel. That's funny. It's usually the other way around. Let's see. Let's see, in Japan, let's see, worse than a civil war. That game, Detroit Becoming Human, is kind of a game on rails, not really a game. Well, I mean, yeah, but it's almost like a choose your own adventure in a lot of ways. But it's every decision matters. It's actually pretty great. Back in the 1980s, I loved the choose your own adventure books. Bought those for my kids when they were little too. Dan has a third armored insignia. That's right. You have a portable. R.L. Bryant says I have a portable solar generator. Portable solar generator. Yes, I did. So wants to know, did I complete Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? Excellent game. Oh, I love that. Huge indie fan. No woke BS and that stuff. It was great. Let's see. And are you American or Republicans or Democrats to nowhere? Are you? That's the thing. I think it's important to remember as something that, we talked about here on the show before. If you're like focused on the politics, like if you get involved in like the Democrats, Republicans, that's where they want us to be fighting. They want us to be fighting like in the, in the political realm, so they can carry out like this 2030 agenda separately from that, which is exactly what they want to do. So, if you want to be in there, if you want to be fighting in the weeds like that, that's what they want, so they can carry out this austerity agenda for us. Put a gas stabilizer in there. Groipenstein says, who is Clayton Morris? That's me. Put a gas stabilizer in there and to keep it good for a year. Okay, good to know. Use a fuel stabilizer. Tiffany Renee, is that right? Tiffany Renee says, use a fuel stabilizer. 1 bottle for every 2.5 gallons of gas can last up to 12 months. Thank you. Yeah, I used to do that back in the day. I haven't done that in years. Gas stabilizer 6 months to a year. But even if you rotate through it on a regular basis, like if you plan on using it, So, all right, everyone. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. How many of you are subscribed to the channel? I saw we got a super chat yesterday that said YouTube has now unsubscribed them twice. Like they've subscribed, then YouTube unsubscribes you. It's crazy. Like usually we add about 25, maybe 25,000 new subscribers per month to our channel. That's how many people usually subscribe. We're nearing that 3 million mark on YouTube. We're getting close to 800 or 700,000 or so on Rumble. But then it's like, how much of that is churn? Like YouTube just unsubscribes people from our YouTube channel. Like imagine if they didn't unsubscribe you. We'd probably be at 5 million subscribers. But they're like, we don't want you subscribed to that channel, so we'll just unsubscribe you. It's insane, these big tech companies. Like, who are you? Someone chooses to subscribe or follow our channel for free, and then you go and unsubscribe them? What kind of horseshit is this? Anyway, thank you guys for watching on this Thursday. Thank you for subscribing. Really, really appreciate it. Go Phillies. And we'll see you back here with content tomorrow. We've got a great interview lined up for you tomorrow here on Redacted. So have a great night, everybody.